Hello! Haven't done a video for a while since the playoffs. Haven't really been in the mood. I was very excited for the season to come back. I was really excited about this new division. Having all the Canadian teams together, for one, it's safer because of COVID, keeping that border traffic minimal. But having, just at least for 1 year, the way that they're going to do it, where you're seeing every Canadian team over and over again, and you're competing against them in the division, so every single game means so much because you're always competing against a division rival. You're not going down to Florida and playing a couple games against Carolina and Tampa and some sort of meaningless games that if you lose them, it's no big deal and you can kind of get your groove back against them. Every single game is meaningful because they're division rivals. Every single game is meaningful because they're these small series, 2 games at a time, 3 games at a time. So there's so much more passion. You're getting to know the teams are disliking each other. We saw with Myers and that late hit against Joel Armia, and there was a fight the next game. I love it. I don't want to see it all the time, but I was thinking moving forward, it really makes a lot of sense that if you're going to go somewhere, if you're going to go through all the trouble of packing up a team in a plane and flying them out somewhere, let them play a couple games against each other. The downside is that I'm a Canadian who lives in Ottawa, and I have to watch the Senators play, and they're terrible. And the product in the arena is awful. It's so irritating. They just blast really cheesy music. They try to do all of the cheapest possible ways of entertaining a crowd, like t-shirt cannons, and they make everybody stand up because there's a veteran in the audience, and that's fine. I appreciate that. But it's just a lot of like crap coming your way. They're a decent team to watch though. But my point was that I'm a Canucks fan. So currently where every team visits every arena, that's pretty nice for any transplanted fans. I know that every year I'm going to be able to watch the Canucks play Ottawa. And if they switch to a system where they're going to play these back-to-back games against each other, you might have 1 year where they play 2 games in Vancouver, and then it's the next year where I would get to see them twice. So it'd be a bit of a trade-off. As long as I get to see them on an average of 1 time a year, I'd be for it. I think it just makes sense. And and the players have said, the ones that have talked out about it, is that they like it. Of course they like it. These guys live out of suitcases. It makes so much sense to unpack your suitcase and get to relax. And also, you can play these back-to-back games and there's less of a drain on the players. Whereas if a team's going to go to play Edmonton and then they got to travel all the way to see Calgary the next day, even if it's a short bit of traveling, it's draining. You have to pack, you have to unpack, you got to get settled, all that kind of crap. Anyways, that's my thoughts on the new season. I think Bettman, it's very easy to hate him because he obviously is siding with the owners, and the owners often will try to get every bit of money out of the players. I don't pretend to understand a lot about cap recapture penalties, and all I'll say about the cap is that I think it should be a soft cap. I think that when every single team is having a problem with the hard cap, that's an issue. And you don't want to see teams who genuinely went by it honestly to come up and acquire and draft these great players, and then they have to get rid of them because it's like a penalty of being a good team. I think that's kind of lame. I think that if you sign somebody like Eriksson for $6 million, Sutter, whatever, why can't the team just buy them out? The player gets all the money, and then they can re-sign with a new team. So Eriksson can get the money he's owed. That's fine. You made a deal. Honor the deal. Give Eriksson his money. Now he can re-sign with the Canucks, or they'll probably end up going somewhere else, because I could just see like the whole attitude of doing a buyout would probably have the players wanting to move on and the owners not wanting to shell out even more money towards them. But Eriksson could go somewhere else. He could play for like $1 million, $2 million, $3 million max, and he could be a useful 4th line guy who's good in the penalty kill and does all the little things that we love to notice. I just think, do that. Like, Sutter is a real heart and soul guy. And yeah, he's not a great playmaker. He's not going to score a lot of goals, but he's got a pretty good shot. He does a lot of little things. He's the kind of guy you really would want on your 4th line at $2 million. $4 million, it's a real drag, especially when you see that Tanev is gone and Toffoli is gone, and they weren't making much more than that. I mean, Toffoli's making, I think, doesn't he make less than Sutter, like by $250,000? So just let them buy these guys out. Anyways, let's move on to how the Canucks have played. It's been terrible. It's been embarrassing. I see this word thrown around a lot, like, oh, we're not seeing a good effort. I don't think it's an effort thing, because these guys are trying. I think it has more to do with momentum and confidence. And the Canucks have no confidence. And I think that we're seeing, not only was Markstrom one of the best goalies in the league, who didn't get his credit because of where he played. And he was actually quite a good leader. And I think what was happening is with Markstrom, you know those plays where the team's getting outshot and Markstrom would come up with just a massive save. And you could see the defenseman go right over to him. The whole team collapses towards him and, like pat him on the pads, and they tell him like, thanks. And you can see that the team is going, sorry. And I think that makes them play better, try harder, because they're rallying around him. They're going, this guy is standing on his head and making unbelievable saves. And you can't blame Demko or Holtby for it, because they haven't really let in bad goals. They haven't really stood on their heads, but that's fine. But what's happening is, because they're not standing on their heads and the team is getting punished for all of these giveaways, you can just see the team deflate even more. And I think Tanev was so rock solid. And he did so many great little plays, and he was playing with Hughes, and he was taking the leadership burden off of Hughes and letting Hughes make mistakes and learn. The guy's still young. He's incredibly talented, but he's still young. He's going to make mistakes. And Tanev really did a good job of insulating him. I mean, you heard when they talked to Hughes about how valuable he thought Tanev was. And it's very clear that he was, and how Tanev is used to weathering these storms. Tanev has played on some terrible Canucks teams. He started in the league when they went to the final, and after that the team's just basically gone downhill. So he's used to it, and they're really missing that presence. And it's really sad that to see Sutter and Eriksson and Myers for $6 million on the team, and Myers is fine again, but for like $4 million. The guy gets hemmed in his own zone so often. If he can't get the puck out within 5 seconds, he's going right to the net, and he's going to stand there. You watch. That's what he does. And he's great at, if he can get a hold of the puck, he's great at breaking it out. But too often, and because they're playing with these really inexperienced defensemen, they're just getting hemmed in because they have no chance. I thought Levy, obviously he looked terrible in his first game or so. I thought the last Montreal game, he looked pretty good. I thought he looked really confident. I thought he was skating well. I thought he was making decisions. I thought he was taking some leadership. I think that when you come in as a young guy, it's probably pretty natural for you to just defer. Watch around you. Give the puck up. I mean, you see these young defensemen, they don't want to make any mistakes, but sometimes they don't want to just take the easy dump out. And like Brogan Rafferty, they don't want to take the easy dump out, and they end up freezing and not knowing what to do, and they end up learning that, man, you make a mistake in the NHL and it gets converted into a goal really quickly. I heard JD Burke on 1040 talking about how Rafferty's had this problem where he's got like a blind spot. He's partially blind or something. And he says he saw him do this play all the time. And if you remember from the Montreal game, Rafferty goes around behind the net into the right corner, the far corner, and just he just freezes. He doesn't know what to do. And two Habs pounced on him. And JD Burke said that was a problem that he had seen countless times in his AHL days. Chatfield looked pretty good. He looked pretty strong. He looked confident. Oh, what I was saying is that, Levy and these guys that come in, and they probably defer, but I think that Levy realized in the last game, we have so many young people, Rafferty, Chatfield, if you're lucky, and Chatfield was hurt. I mean, could they have had worse luck? Edler's out. Hamanek's out. They got 3 AHL guys in that have less than 10 games experience or something. And then the best one of the trio of AHL guys is hurt in that game, so they're playing with 5 defensemen for the rest of the game. Ben, I thought, played way better than he did in the playoffs. In the playoffs, I thought he was easily their worst defenseman. And I was shocked they didn't bring back Fantenberg. I wasn't shocked because I don't understand a lot of the moves Benning makes. He makes some good ones and he makes a lot of really questionable calls. I think Benning, there's a saying, you are promoted until failure. And we saw that Benning was an assistant GM in Boston. They had a lot of success there. And now he's the GM. And I think he's probably a much better assistant GM because he can pick some good draft picks, but there's some other really questionable ones. I mean, you cannot deny Pettersson and Hughes, obviously, and Brock Besser. But you certainly can deny Virtanen. And when you were hearing the scouting reports on Virtanen, we've heard this. How many times have we heard this? All the tools, just got to put it together. Lacks hockey sense. Hockey sense is everything. I think Pavel Datsyuk, teams didn't draft him because the book on him was a lot of hockey sense. Doesn't really have the top end tools, but it turned out he really did. And the hockey sense makes a big difference. That's why Burroughs was so good, because he had hockey sense and patience. You see Virtanen running around looking for something to do, but you have to be able to anticipate where to go. And he can't. Virtanen at best is bottom six with a bit of skill, but at a really low number. And again, really sad to see that Virtanen stuck around and you couldn't give that money to Toffoli. Toffoli for $4 million, that's the most you want to spend. Those $4 million players, that number's going up now as the top salaries rise up, but it's always that $4 million, $5 million, the second tier offensive player. They're very hard to predict. And you see a lot of teams end up with them, and it's hard to get them at value. Sometimes you really do. There are like big swings where you either get a really good value for them or they can kind of tie you down. You know, something I noticed with Hughes and the team chemistry and confidence is that the team, this was maybe a couple games in, the team was just playing terribly. And Hughes was skating towards the bench and Schmidt was coming towards him. And Schmidt went over to give him a fist bump, hey man, it's okay. And Hughes just had his head down. And I thought, man, Schmidt is used to being on a team of winners with a lot of confidence. And you ever watch volleyball? No matter what happens, the team, they get up off the sand, they lost that point, they all go in and they fist bump. And but there's no resentment, there's no feeling like you screwed that up. Because volleyball is a team sport, but only one person can touch the ball at a time. So there's a lot of pressure on the individual. And Schmidt has that volleyball mentality of, we're going to stick together and do this. And I thought that when he went over to Hughes and Hughes just had his head down, I thought Hughes is naturally going to have a leadership role because of his incredible skill and the amount of time he's on the ice, the amount of time he holds the puck, running the power play, the breakout. And I think it's I think it's a bit too much responsibility for him right now while the team is not playing well. And that's fair. He's a young guy and defense is very hard. And he plays in a high risk, high reward position where when you make a mistake, it's highlighted. Virtanen and Hughes can make the same amount of mistakes, but if Virtanen makes a mistake, you go, ugh, you blew the pass and now we lost possession in the offensive zone. When Hughes makes a mistake, now it's a turnover, 2-on-0, and another goal. So I thought that was pretty telling. And I think that without Tanev and Markstrom and Toffoli, that's three big voices that had a lot of credibility with the team, especially Tanev and Markstrom. But Toffoli too. Toffoli has that championship swagger of this is what we need to do to get it done. And when you have Pettersson and Hughes, who are super skilled, and like I said, by nature of their position and skill, they're going to have a leadership position. They're going to have an influence on the team. But when the team is not playing well, that can be dangerous because they're young. You see Pettersson, he's like pouting. The guy scores a goal and he's pretty upset. I mean, just at the start of the last game, he had a high stick or something and he was slamming his stick on the ice. You like to see that passion. You like to see that he's very competitive, because to win at the highest level, the more competitive you are, the better. All the greatest athletes, you dig into them and they have borderline psychopathic competitive tendencies. Like just look at Michael Jordan and Wayne Gretzky and these types. If you're if you're just there to have fun, you're probably not going to win. It's like Ryan Kessler. You probably would never. He can be a hard guy to respect for how he is, but he wants to win. And Miller is that type too. I talked about Miller along the playoffs because he has that mentality, and I thought that he was going to push the team forward, but they're really struggling. Horvat's playing well. Höglander started well and has shown spurts, but he's struggling to figure out how do you get through these defense. How do you get through the NHL defense? Because they're just stopping him all over the place. But he's trying, and he's hustling. Besser, I'm not a big fan of Besser. He looks way faster this year, and he has a shot, but he does this thing where he gets the puck and he goes triple deke, and then he wrists. You need to shoot, dude. That's Carey Price over there. He's on his way to stop your shot. Triple deke. What are you, Gunnar Stahl? No triple deke. Shoot. I think Besser's fantastic at like 6 million, 5 million. But when they have to qualify him at 7 million, he's going to take up that much cap space. He's not a great playmaker. He's okay. He's got some speed. I just think you could probably get a better piece for him. And keep in mind, I didn't watch his rookie season. And that seems to be where everybody fell in love with him. And they're having a hard time divorcing. Sure, he was a killer rookie. And he's got a great shot. And his injuries have slowed him down the last couple of years. But you need to be better for 7 million. Who else? Horvat's been everything you could hope for. And Mott, I still think, needs a better chance and needs to play with playmaking players because he's got a good shot. He's got good instincts, but he needs more talented players. He's not. Look at what he's done already. He's had more offensive chances than Pettersson, and he's been playing with Beagle. So get him playing with Gaudette, or at least Sutter or something. Somebody, or Virtanen on the other side. Virtanen's been exactly how he plays. He can skate around really fast. He doesn't hit that hard. I do like this move he can do where he kind of floats across the line. And he has this way where he's sort of, his body's moving one way and he has a stick the other way. And he can be really shifty. He's great on that second power play, which is what they've desperately needed. To have some offensive spark somewhere, especially with all the penalties being called. But, I just don't. I really hope they can get rid of him for something. Sutter, I thought, has been fine. Pretty good, actually. He's had some rushes, had some shots. He's Sutter. Beagle has been okay. These guys have continually lowered the bar on what you expect from them. You can't look at their contract anymore. The problem with Beagle and Sutter is that they're both solid fourth line guys, but they make too much and we have two of them, so one needs to go. But how are you going to do that? And especially now with COVID, it's got to be way harder to trade somebody. And McEwen came in. I thought he actually had a pretty good game. The knock against him in the playoffs is I thought, yeah, he's big and he can shoot and he can handle the puck a little bit. And he's at an intimidating force or whatever. But in the playoffs, he just constantly was overwhelmed. And I just thought they lost offensive momentum every time he was on the ice. But I thought he looked a lot better in the last game. Gaudette, same thing. The guy's running around. The effort's there. He's had some shots, but does he really have that NHL skill to be anything more than a third or fourth line protected guy? He's in this bubble of like, yeah, if you've got two solid second lines, you'd like to think that he would be on the third line and could be effective and play against worse competition, but it just doesn't really seem to work. Maybe if he had Mott with him, Mott and Virtanen and Gaudette, I would like to see. I think that's a lot of speed, and Mott has a lot of defensive responsibility. I think Gaudette's fine defensively. Maybe Virtanen can learn from them, is what we always hear. Maybe Virtanen will learn from this situation. And then for defense, like I already talked about Hughes, I think Schmidt he's been very valuable. The guy can skate. He makes great safe plays. He can break out. He's got some leadership qualities. I think it was a godsend that he came to the team for what, like a second round pick, third round pick? And I thought Hamonic has been just fine for a guy that hasn't played for 10 months and isn't he on like $1 million contract? That's another miracle that you found somebody like that, and that ownership went out and got him, because oh my God, did they ever need him. Yeah, I've liked Hamonic. He's not been great, but he's been playing ridiculous minutes. I think he's been leading the team in penalty kill, shot blocking. He's on the top pair usually with Hughes. So you can't hate on what he gives you, especially for that money. If you go for the money and that they give up nothing, preferably he'd be second or third pairing. And he would just be fantastic. Or we talked about Ben, talked about Myers, and Edler. Edler's been pretty solid, you know? He doesn't make as many great plays, but he rarely makes bad ones. And he's a great leader and comes back early from being injured. Just great. So, but what are you going to do with this team going forward? I think they should probably get rid of Benning. I think that he has made so many bad moves to offset his good ones. And his good ones have been Pettersson, Hughes, Besser, getting Schmidt, getting Hamonic, who, I mean, no other team. Hamonic was just sitting out there. I don't know why no other team went for him. What else? He somehow traded Goodbranson. That was insane. And he brought in Miller. That was a really good call. So he's made some good moves, but a lot of those are kind of ones that fell into him. I mean, if you had a better GM, but you had Benning assisting the GM and saying, I think you should draft Pettersson. I think you should draft Hughes. If you have his draft acumen, but then you have another GM who goes, I don't think I'm going to give Tyler Myers $6 million, who's been playing on the third line in Winnipeg. That's crazy. That's the thing with Myers. 4 million tops, you'd be happy. But 6. And Vegas needed to unload Schmid. So Benning was in the right place at the right time. So we'll see what's going to happen. I'm recording this right before they play Ottawa. And I'm excited to see it. But oh my God. This team, maybe we'll just be happy with a good draft pick this year. And people say, oh, it's early. It's not early. It's like a 50-game season. And every team they've struggled against, we are going to see them the rest of the year. And every time we lose to them, those teams are now 2 points ahead. So it is not early. This is a season where nothing is too early. Maybe one game's too early. But every single game is more intense than it has been since the original 6? It's too bad that Hughes and Pettersson, who are on these the last year of their entry-level contracts, that the team can't make more noise. And it's disappointing after they had such a big playoff run. But, you know, the way we're seeing Pettersson struggle and Hughes, maybe they weren't ready anyway. So if they can get another good draft pick out of it and you reset for the next year, back to regular hockey, get some contracts off the books. I think Sutter's off the books next year. But that's just going to, all that cap room is going to be eaten up by Hughes and Pettersson anyway. They're still going to have to make more room for those guys. Oh my God. Oh God. Oh. I don't know. I'm looking forward to the game.